Welcome to episode 19 of the Service Course Report podcast. A good friend of mine, my personal trainer, said if you can get to 20 episodes, that's when podcasting really begins. So we're working on it. We're trying to get there.
I guess we're one away now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are on Spotify, Apple. Apple will be providing video to you in your phone in March. So we're looking forward to having video there. You can watch us on Spotify and YouTube and listen on Apple currently. We appreciate the comments, the likes, the feedback. They help us grow. Please pass it along and share it with a friend. That helps as well. So my name's Ed Philbrick. I'm joined by Kurt Stockton, and we're just going to chat along here, and hopefully Darren will jump in somewhere along the hour here.
Yeah. All right. Episode 19. One away from starting podcasting. I like it. Well, we've come a long ways from the VHS video cameras at Santa Barbara Middle School. So, yeah. And slideshows with real slides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter's working for NBC as an intern, and today she sent me a photo of the newsroom, the control center, where they're toggling between all the cameras, and she's just sitting there watching and learning. And I remember when I was in middle school, me and Darren sat in the public broadcasting studio where they would have multiple cameras, and someone would sit and practice going from one thing to the other. And I think we actually went live. So we were podcasting way back in the 80s.
Yeah.
In middle school.
Before, yeah. I mean, you guys were also in a rock and roll band too. So, I mean.
Yeah. Well, you were in that band too, I think. No, maybe not.
Nah.
The Unts.
No, I was, most of my musical career playing music is pressing play. Never got into playing an instrument. So. But it was all good. Yeah, I mean, it's fun, right? We talk about how we've seen cycling change, but we've seen podcasting change too, right? Or broadcasting to podcasting. And yeah, we all have it at home now.
Well, even music. We've seen music change.
Yeah.
Chris Rest, who was in that band, he's probably about to retire from his punk rock career with Lagwagon. I mean, he's a legitimate touring musician. So, some of us succeeded, some of us didn't.
Yeah. Do old musicians ever really retire though? Maybe punk rockers do, if the body can't take it.
Yeah. I notice he's into running.
Yeah. All right.
So you've been doing any riding?
I've been getting it in a little bit. Like I said, I think our last episode I talked about how I had finally recovered from that big ride I did. And mostly just getting some rides in on the weekend and then doing the indoor stuff. But I feel like that I kind of like pushed through a little something doing that longer ride, and got in a little 3-hour one last weekend here. We have been getting a little bit of rain again. We got some last week, and we had a bit of mud. Went on one of our favorite roads that sometimes the 4-wheel drive vehicles get on, and it was a bit ripped up. But you could still kind of get around the mud, and luckily it was all on the uphill bits rather than having to bomb down through it. So that's always been fun. And yeah, it's just the weather's been really spectacular, even if it was a little wet. Of course, it's snowing out there now, so I think my time on the trails is going to be postponed for a little bit. But just been doing that, and if it stays wet, if it stays cold, the snow will stay, which will keep those north-facing spots shaded. They'll take longer to dry, so I might have to dust off the old road bike and take it out here if and when the sun comes out. One of the things I like about riding off-road when it's cold is you're not going as fast, so you don't get that wind chill like you do when riding the road bike. But as we say at the service course report, just ride all the bikes. So if one doesn't work, just ride another one. I mean, even riding indoors some days, it's still riding. What about you?
That's our second most popular episode, is Ride All the Bikes is the title.
Yeah.
So I've been riding a little bit abbreviated by rain. We've had quite the outburst of monsoonal rain driving on the coast of San Diego here. So shorter rides around the rain. I need to find longer rides in my repertoire. I got 1 week to go to ride 70 miles at BWR Arizona, which I'm a little bit worried about because my longest ride is probably like 3 hours or something. So searching for longer rides and getting ready for Arizona, which will be a week from Saturday.
I think for that 70 miles, how much time you looking at?
Oh, 4 hours, something like that. I don't know. I just know that 70 miles is pretty far for me right now.
Yes. Longer than what you're used to. I guess
Yeah.
it depends on how good the aid stations are, if they entice you to stay a little bit longer. Although I don't know if you're like me, every bit of time you spend at an aid station is time that your body starts to shut down a little bit, and it takes a little longer to get back going. So I try to keep those at a minimum time wise. Just get what you need and go.
Yeah, I've done this race twice. It's dry and hot. We're not really acclimated when we arrive out there. So the aid stations are important. I usually skip the first one. It's a way I can try and beat my friends. Um, the second the second aid station is very important, and it was oddly right before the downhill to the finish. So it was like you were just sort of death marching to the last aid station, and then you would bomb down to the finish. But this year we have a whole new course. They moved the start finish to McDowell State Park. Um, so we're gonna head out into the sand neighborhood roads, sand neighborhoods, and then to the moto trails, and then back into McDowell. So I have a feeling the whole thing is going to be completely different as far as aid stations are going. And I know that they're trying to use one aid station multiple times, so it figure eight's past it. Kind of an interesting thing happened to them. They thought they had a location for the start finish all approved and ready to go. It was on BLM land. It was going to allow camping. And then it turned out that Marina 50 miles away had the food exclusive, and they couldn't serve food. So they had to move the location. But luckily McDowell State Park is graciously hosting. And so the start finish will be where the aid station number 1 was that I used to always skip.
Oh, there we go. Well, good thing they were able to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's the fun of event production. You
Yeah.
always expect the unexpected, and when you think you got it all dialed, you better go check everything out. So, yeah, it's important for everyone to have food at the end of the day, huh? Yeah.
Well, and the other thing about this location that always triggers a little in my memory bank is I think that I went to watch the Cactus Cup. You raced that night, and there's a great picture of you racing on Yeti. And then the next day, there was like dirt criterium or something like that. And I went out and rode with you guys both there. I was on one of Darren's downhill bikes or something.
Oh yeah, one of the extras. Yeah.
But whenever I'm riding through there, I go, I think I've been here before. This
Yeah.
is Cactus Cup.
Oh, wait a minute. The Cactus Cup. Yeah, the Cactus Cup criterium.
Yeah, it's a great picture of you, by the way.
I just, you know how sometimes the search feature works on your computer? It just works. So
It's getting better all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, it actually is doing well. This latest Mac, if you went to Mac OS 26, whatever version we're in now, some things changed, but that seems to be working better. So, all right, there he is.
All right, I'm in. How's it going, guys?
We're
Good.
talking about Cactus Cup, and I was having deja vu when I was riding BWR there, because I go, I think I've been here before. And I went on a mountain bike ride with you and KS at the Cactus Cup. You lent me like one of your downhill bikes or something.
Oh, nice. Was it the Pinnacle Peak, or was it where it was down at the horse corral thing?
Horse corral
Yeah.
area.
And then the single track kind of went up into the slightly false flat ups and then would wind back down. Yeah, that's that killer shot of KS and the Fat Boy crit.
Yeah. Fat Boy criterium right there.
So what do you see in that bike? Tell us what you see.
Well, it was called the Fat Boy Criterium because there was basically one company specialized that made a slick mountain bike tire back then, and they called it the Fat Boy. And I think that was an 1.25 inch tire, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
The Fat Boy. And so they, back when it was like we talk about ride all the bikes, race all the bikes. Well, it was a mountain bike race, but they had a criterium, and it's dark. You can see it's at night. You can see the people in the background. The guy's got short sleeves on. It was in Arizona, so it was warm. I think that was the last turn of the last lap. I'm going for third place because Greg Orovets got the better of John Tomac in a 2-up breakaway to take that win. But it was like I was blown away how far you could lean that bike over with those tires. It was just like this huge patch of rubber. Right?
Look at how much the tires are where they contact the ground. That was I remember the first thing when we saw this photo that I noticed. I'm like, look at the contact patch there.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, exactly.
I mean, I look at that. I got the bigger one over here, but it's like, it's actually pretty amazing that I didn't wipe out.
You have the grip, dude.
Out.
Plus a little bit of suspension and
Yeah, so that was it. I think if I remember correctly, it was short out of the last turn, so you had to be the first one through it. Jumped to the backside, went for it. Time, road shoes, and pedals there. Right?
Yeah.
We were racing, and that was probably what, DS 93, where we were thinking that's 93? Is that what you were just saying, Ed?
93, or that might be 94. I'm looking at the skin suit. Yeah, maybe 93.
Well, in any case, still racing on the road a little bit. So still definitely had the road legs for that. And I kind of felt like I was licking my chops racing a Criterium with a bunch of mountain bikers. But unfortunately, there were 2 super fit guys that also raced on the road that were off the front.
All right. So my question is, KS, as it relates to this picture, is who is Phil?
I don't know. Everyone always asks that. Like, why were you on Phil's bike?
Dude, who's Phil?
I don't know who Phil was in that one. Yeah. Maybe Brett Hahn would know. He's like the one person that might know.
He would probably know.
Phil was at that point. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see that if Darren's referring to the sticker on the top tube that
sticker
says Phil, and it doesn't have a last name, right? These Yeti stickers. Oh, and I put them downstairs. I think I showed them in one of our last episodes. I got some original name stickers from our bikes from this guy that bought all those from Yeti. They were the first. Like, they did a lot of firsts, and one of them is they put these giant stickers on the top tubes of the names of the riders. So anytime there was a picture anywhere in a magazine, it was all magazines back then, you'd see the rider's name right on there. So who's Phil? That's a mystery. And also
it's not Phil Tidsman?
Nah.
No, he never raced for Yeti. And also this bike is gray and turquoise rather than yellow and turquoise, right? So the whole rear part of the triangle is gray, which leads me to believe it was, I don't know, a one-off? I don't know. But a Manitou fork, right? Looks like I'm looking at it on the
about 2 inches of plush elastomer travel.
Right? Got some nice Ringley bottle cages there. Yeah. If anyone rode with those, they were great in that you never lost a bottle, but as soon as anything sticky leaked out of the bottle, it basically glued it to the bottle cage, and then you couldn't get the bottle cage out. Yeah.
I like
body fuel.
On the bar ends, the purple bar ends matching.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is for me, like when we were talking about the Phil name on the top tube, I think we had talked about it before, Parker was like, had all these different people, different bikes, and he's like, hey, come on out and ride a bike. And for me, that was like contrary, like right in the road cycling days, like your road bike was like, you would never let anybody ride your bike, let alone race it, just like show up on a weekend and take your bike out and race it. But that's a thing as I later got into training in motocross, like, that's kind of a way that they think about things. Like you just have a bike there, and the bikes like are pretty similar. You could change somebody's handlebars and maybe their grips or something, so it's a quick switch, but you'll have bikes on the trailer and you just show up and ride the bike, but you don't get to keep your bike at the end of the year. Obviously in motocross, the bike's a little obviously worth, well, actually not necessarily worth more money these days with all the carbon. But yeah, you in motocross, the guys would never get to keep their bikes unless you win a championship. Then sometimes the manufacturer, your team, will give you your your actual bike. Yeah. But so it was kind of a little bit, that took.
Well, looking at that thing, right? I probably put my own seat, maybe my own seat and seat post in it.
Squadra HDP saddle, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Yep.
The San Marco. And then, of course, the Time Criterion pedals and the Keep Pro shoes. Yeah, that was was still in the peak of the time. The helmet.
Time helmet, yep.
Helmet. Those were probably Time gloves, too, actually. They did a red one for a while. Yeah.
Outfitted. Kitted.
Outfitted on that stuff, yeah. I know. What else? It looks like...
it's an aluminum frame, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was the standard color that they were trying to sell at the time when it went green to gray, or blue, whatever the official name for the turquoise color is.
Yeah, maybe only the race bikes were yellow. I don't recall yellow and turquoise.
Maybe that could have been a thing where it was just the race bikes, or maybe they were just rocking two colors. But I know for sure that turquoise, and the yellow was race colors for sure.
Yeah. Well, look at the jersey.
Yeah.
Right.
The cool thing about that turquoise color is the legend has it that Terry Gearhart's Ritchie was painted that turquoise color originally, and that turquoise color is a Dodge paint color, official Dodge vehicle paint color. And Terry Gearhart tracked it down and painted his Ritchie that color. You remember his Ritchie?
Yeah.
And then Parker saw it, and then that's where that color comes from. So it really comes from Hendrickson's and all those times when Parker would be hanging out at the counter.
I never knew that. Look at me, just learned a piece of history right there.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
You can read about it in Substack article number 1 of the service course report. We actually identify the color, which I will pull up. It has a name. It's like desert something.
Desert tortoise? No.
Yeah.
Desert tortoise.
Well, and it was also an ode to Terry after he passed away, right? Like that was why he did it. So, yeah. Terry Gearhart was one of the many mentors, cycling people from Santa Barbara, where we all grew up working at Hendrickson's Bike Shop down on State Street. So, the Cactus Cup. When
we first got our mountain bikes, I think there were some closeout stump jumpers that we got. So in '84.
Or 83,
me and Darren got closeout stump jumpers, and Kurt, you already had your Ritchie. And then the first weekend that we all had those, we rode with Terry up and over, down, and swam in Paradise, and then rode back over probably 9,000 feet of climbing or something.
I know, you think about those old rides, right, on that steel mountain bike, but we were just out there all day. There's no worry about pace or anything. I remember going up, it must have been coming up Angostura, because I don't think it's Arroyo Burro. I think it's on Angostura. There was always, back then at least, there was like a bit of a creek thing that came down off the rocks. And so if you were dying and going up, you could stop there and get some water. And it wasn't like old and nasty. It was usually pretty good. The runoff, mixing in some Prips I ganked from the Olympic Training Center. Or maybe it was, that Prips lemon. It was good. They're like, you can make it hot. It's like tea, or drink it cold as as an electrolyte.
Oh, that's right. They used to make that stuff hot when they would have all us juniors out there in Colorado Springs in like January.
And snow.
Freezing out in the plains heading out toward Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
Just have some hot Prips.
Yeah, the hot Prips.
That's a good one.
Oh, that triggers a story for me.
Okay.
We rode out into the plains.
Yeah.
I think Walter Gubalilski or whatever was my coach. We were out in the plains. The buffalo were roaming. The snow was everywhere. And they at the turnaround, they had the hot drink, whatever it was. And it just activated my nose. Like the minute I because it was such transition of temperatures, and I drank some of that, and all of a sudden I just got this huge bloody nose. And I was like, there was a pool this big, and they rushed me into the back of the car, and then they ran me to the doctor, and he cauterized it right there. I got some free medical care, right on,
That's it, man. Just whipped out the soldering iron.
That's it, yeah.
But I always had it that it was the hot drink, and it just like triggered my sinuses and sent me off.
Oh wow, that's a good. I hadn't heard that story.
Yeah, the hot tea at the turnaround. That was it. Think how many PFCs or whatever it is we were getting out of the water bottles back then after pouring like scalding hot liquids in them.
We're still all here.
That's what I was going to say. We survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool.
I remember Walter looking at my cross bike, which was a hand-me-down from UKS that had self applied, do-it-yourself braze-ons on it. You know, you could still see the
Vincenti braze-ons.
Yeah, I don't
Probably
know.
still some flux on there.
There was flux. I don't know if Tony did it, but you know, luckily the fork still was okay from the temperature work and all that.
Right.
But I remember Walter looking and he goes, "That's not your regular race bike, is it?"
They're like, no.
You don't race on that in the summertime, do you?
Walter, that's pretty funny.
No way. We weren't going to bring our good bikes to the snowy winters of Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah. The only test that mattered was the ergo test, and you didn't ride your own bike anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you fast forward a few years too, when you were doing all that track work, and you guys had Yeti Pursuit bikes, right? Didn't but they were the turquoise.
They were
correct, right?
Yeah.
With like super minimalist, if I remember, like bushing
headset, like a Delrun headset, right? No bearings, just.
Yeah.
Tell us about those bikes.
Well, they have to have a picture. If you search the internet, you can find them.
Do you have one?
They're still rolling around in bicycle messengers in New York City. They're probably highly sought after.
The bikes themselves, you mean? There's a few still out there?
There's a few still out there. I think Ben Edwards' bike is still out there. So Chris Herding and Chris Chance did, and Frank the Welder did the actual welding, and they were Yetis. They were Rory O'Reilly designs. They were dual 24-inch wheels. They did not have a headset. You know, Rory was very early to the narrow as arrow. You know, now they're saying one of the biggest factors in aerodynamics is the head tube, and so you'll notice that factor is very narrow and arrow. Everyone's trying to narrow down their head tube, and those were 3/4-inch head tubes, and we had no headset. We had
I think it was Delrun, wasn't it?
Delron bushings.
I remember those
bars. Dual 24. We had to run big gearing because of the small 24-inch wheels. And interesting story. Traveling with your bike in the old days, I mean, you guys probably eventually got bike bags and stuff, but it was expensive, you know?
oh, yeah.
There it is.
There it is.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Now, that was right around the time, that
that's from the...
they had changed the rules for cost on disc wheels. And so I don't know if that's an actual disc, but there got a point where I remember they allowed you to just take an aerodynamic sheet and stick it over. Remember there was some process you guys did, Tony was doing at his house, where you first glued like balsa wood to the rim, and then you like stuck like a mylar, some type of plastic, and then you would do the iron over it and it would like tighten it up. That looks like an actual head disc though, right there.
Yeah, those are actual heads. And when I won the state championships, I was on those Falcon discs, which were Kevlar.
Oh yeah.
Which were downright amazing. Those are carbon.
The size of that chainring.
Yeah, it's probably honestly a 60-tooth chainring.
Yeah.
To be honest, if I recall.
So then you got the straps on the shoes, and then you black taped. Now, is that taping your foot to the pedal, or is that just tape around the front of your shoe for support?
If I recall, I had Alfredo Binda straps underneath the black tape.
Triple strap.
So this is the kilo. I did horrible. You notice I'm ahead over the red line. I honestly think this is the 89 national championships at the Redmond Velodrome, which was not made for Big Ed. It wasn't steep enough.
Oh, yeah.
So when Big Ed hit turn whatever, I floated up high and rode too far. But the ironic thing is that bike I rode in the points race. So I didn't bring my regular track bike because I was trying to avoid bike fees. So I brought my road bike and that bike. And I put a bar across the cow horns between my hands there. and I showed up, and the officials just had a fit. Like they got out the tape measure, they were measuring my bike front to wheelbase, they were
Right.
measuring everything, and then I got into an early break in the points race with Frankie Andreo, and I was like freaking like leading the points race for a brief moment
Right. Right.
on that bike, because I got into a break. And it was all because I didn't want to bring an extra regular track bike. So I rode Kilo, Team Pursuit, and Points Race on that bike. And it was definitely a John Parker creation. You'll notice how narrow the fork crown is,
Yeah.
very narrow.
Yeah.
It was super stiff. The bars were amazing. Those are
Like, look at with the small wheels, right? If you look at the angle of the chainstay as it comes from the rear hub or the rear axle into the bottom bracket, like normally it drops down. If you think of like a bike with 700Cs, you're looking at it from the side, it's dropping down to the bottom bracket. This is going up or looks flat because, the wheels are so small, the BB, you got to get the BB height correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And ironically, there's still a roll saddle, Sia Italia.
Oh, yeah.
rolls.
Got to have the rolls on there. You got the O'Reilly Cycles logo on the SBBC team jersey whilst on the O'Reilly bike.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is that like a drawing of him at the Olympics or something?
It's a drawing that Tony did of him. Yeah. He had no logo. So we made him one.
Yeah,
So
nice.
the O's the front wheel, and
Yeah.
then Riley. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Look
And
at
then
you even had matching color-coded helmet cover
Yeah.
on your Giro helmet too to match the turquoise on the frame.
I love the facial expression.
Yeah.
That's a
That's a
kilo
kilo face.
For people who haven't ever done a kilo on the track, some people say it's the hardest event because you don't quite go as hard as you can the whole time. There's just like a brief period, right, where you just basically, if it was a 4-lap kilo, your third lap, you would maybe try and just like recover or hold pat before you give it your last bit, but it's just like constant lactic acid, just painful event.
Well, now you would drop into your aero bars at that moment when you're just completely out of
Right.
gas and float. But
Help
back
carry you
then,
through.
you were just sucking wind.
Yeah.
Example right here.
Kind of looks like the stem on the bars on the Cervelos, where it's just kind of two coming out at the angle ahead of its time.
Or the UAE Colnago.
Yeah, or the UAE Colnagos now too. Yeah,
This guy's got nothing on the Santa Barbara Bike Club.
in '89.
The late 80s.
So our team pursuit team, the idea was we could sit really close with the smaller wheels. We were
Yeah.
a shorter team. Never mind the additional rolling resistance that a smaller wheel generates.
That's the best part about back then. All the stuff that they just told us, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then now they're like, no, that doesn't make sense.
So there's a lot of pictures of the team pursuit day, which was probably the next day. We just got off to a slow start, and to be honest, someone that was lagging, not me, but Tony was dying, and Rory just went to the front and just dragged us. Like I'll never forget how fast that guy could go. His wheels would just skip with speed.
Yeah.
He could just skip his wheels, and we got 7th and failed to qualify because probably the top 6 advanced or whatever.
Right.
But the next day was quite a sentimental day for me. The very next day, my parents got divorced, and they came to watch me that day. And the next day, we went and did something as a family, the 3 of us, my mom, my dad, and me. And I'll never forget that day because I was walked into what was probably a Starbucks. I didn't know Starbucks at the time. And I looked down at the table, and there's a picture of me right on the front page of the newspaper. And I go, oh, that's me. And my mom and my dad stand there, and they're looking at it, And I have some pictures of spending the day with my parents that day. And it was quite,
That is cool.
growing up as a divorced kid, if you ever, never really spent time with both your parents together, it was kind of an amazing moment. So
Yeah.
that was the best
That's really
part
cool.
of that weekend.
That's awesome. And cycling was the glue that brought it together. Yeah. That's really cool. All right.
Well, hey, we got talking about riding and what we've been doing, and Ed was going to Arizona, then we got to talk about the Cactus Cup, and then we go into this. But what have you been riding, DS?
I've been on the gravel bike. I was out 2 times this weekend. One day out on the Cart Bluffs, and then another day out up behind Summerlin. It's kind of been my main jam I've been hitting, and trying out some different tires. I threw a different setup on my bike. I've been running, the Arids are rated for 50s, and I've been running a set of 50C Gravel King SKs, but in a thick casing. I wanted to try it out because our front side trails had gotten pretty beat up last year, just between rain and stuff. But I was interested in getting a standard casing set of tires, just because sometimes I feel like the thick casing tires are just a little too thick. They lose some of their feel. And so I had kind of surmised, also based on, the setup of my bike, that I wanted to try a little bit of tire finagling. So I had Pan Racer send me out a 50 for the rear, but I put a 29 by 2.1 on the front. So it's a couple mils bigger, just to kind of give a little bit more grip on the front. And so I rode those, and it was awesome. It's a good setup. It's my new Shangri-La out there. So I was ripping that around as much as I could. So that was really fun. Yeah. And then I do have one more ride that I'll tell you about, but I'll save that for the amateur segment because I have to self-nominate myself. So we'll bring that up a little bit later.
Well, then we got at least a couple for that. Yeah. Well, I can tell you today, I did something I haven't done in, I think, 3 years. I shoveled snow today.
Damn.
We've been getting enough snow up here. Yeah. It was kind of melty today, and it's supposed to get cold tonight. So I had to shovel out the parking in front of the house before it freezes at night and gets all slickery. So, yeah, I'm glad I don't live somewhere where you got to shovel snow regularly. But the dog, she sure had a good time running around in the snow when I was doing it. So It was all worthwhile. Yeah.
Well, so did you guys already talk about the rides that you had done? Or were you just getting into it? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We
were. And that's how we got off on a tangent to Arizona and what we did and what we're going to do. So,
right.
Yeah. And then, we were talking about science and this and that, but I know the three of us had been kind of going back and forth on this Finnish sprint crash at this the Classica Jean, which I'd never heard of that race. Ed had seen it before, but it's like a similar kind of Strada Bianchi thing that had a bunch of gravel sectors in it.
Right.
They were racing through olive trees and all this. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, there was a sprint finish, which when I watched the race, I realized was for second place. It wasn't for the win.
Right.
With Tom Pidcock and Maxime Van Gils and Christian, what's the guy, the UAE kid that
Jan Christian.
Jan Christian. And so this has been all over the internets of things, flagrant sprint foul, this, that, and the other. And I guess the first part that's kind of being missed is it was a brilliant solo effort by Tim Wellens. He was solo for like 50K, and he was up over a minute and a half, and then there was a chase. UAE and had the numbers, and they've been racing real strong, so their guys got to sit on because Wellens was off the front. But then it was Red Bull, and those guys going back and forth in the Q36.5 team, and finally it became Tom Pidcock, Maxime Van Gils, and Jan Christian battling it out, but it was for second place, and so it came down to a sprint finish. And I guess I could pull it up on YouTube, but then we'll probably get yanked down for some copyrighted stuff. But I would say that from the overhead shot, which is the best vantage point for kind of analyzing this, I would say that Pidcock caught those guys by surprise. He came from far back, and they were on the right-hand side of the road. He jumped left and went. And when he came by, both of those guys saw him, and they both went to the left-hand side of the road to try to get a little bit of slingshot or something, but he came by them going so much faster. And Jan Christian was ahead of Van Gils, and they both went across to the left, and I never saw the door get shut down. What I saw is as they were sprinting, they weren't sprinting like this next to each other. They were sprinting like this, And when they got kind of close to the side, it was Jan Christian leaned in and Van Gils leaned in, and he was behind. And as DS, as you talked about, with that crash with Philipsen in the Tour, when your handlebars get taken out, there's not much you can do. And it looked like he got hit by the handlebar in the hip, and that was the end of it. And so they were just unsynced. And then a little bit owed to last week's pod too. There was a lot of elbow flap going on, a la Mathieu van der Poel at the start of a cyclocross. And I mean, for me, it was racing. It was just racing. It was an unfortunate thing that happened, but it looked to me like it was racing. I don't know what your guys' take is on it.
Well, I was trying to bring it up because I think Van Gils was sprinting on the tops.
But both him and Christian were on the tops. That's correct.
On the levers, on the levers.
No, I totally concur with you, Cass. I think Jan Christian is running out of gas, and he's just trying to follow the wheel, and he knew he was dying. He's looking for speed, and they're both going over. It doesn't look blatant to me, and honestly, I don't think it deserves relegation, and I was really surprised. I feel like the pundits on the internet have never been in a sprint and never been out of gas.
Right.
Yeah.
And like there was a lot of punditry around the Australian national championships this year. And I was like, this whole chasing down the Alula teammates whole scenario. And it's like, I feel like these people that are commenting have never been in a road race and knew that they can't sprint.
Right.
Which was like me, right?
Yeah.
When I was younger, I could never sprint. So your tactics sometimes don't look great, or back to this. They're just trying to follow a wheel and find speed, and I don't think there was anything blatant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would concur with both of your guys' take. I mean, if you look at it, if Pidcock wasn't there, and let's just say those two guys were sprinting it out, and you take somebody across the road, you might, they might have a claim, but Pidcock's in front of them. They're both going for the draft. And it really looked, honestly, to me like the rider in front looked like he just kind of stopped his fade and gave him enough room. That's why I was kind of surprised. It didn't look like he put him into the barrier. It just looked like the rider behind, like KS was saying, maybe their lean and how they were coming together was a little bit out of sync, but I mean, the rider in back was never close to getting his bars even up equal with him. And that's kind of the decider, if your bars are back.
Yeah.
I thought it was a poor call. It felt a little bit to me, I mean, much smaller stage, but a little bit like when they deked Sagan out of the Tour that year. The circumstances made the crash look weird, but as we all know, when you went back days later, it wasn't him at all. It was the barriers. It was how Cavendish hit it. And so I think unfortunately they just seem like I don't know if they make these quick snap decisions or if they just don't have a good judging panel that's ever actually been, like you said, that person in a sprint or a person sprinting at the end of a breakaway when your just legs are shot and you got dirt in your eyes and you're trying to, trying to move over.
When Jan Christian was the guy who was blatantly holding on to the car door during the Alula tours, and he also has a little bit of a reputation in addition to holding on to the car door, so I feel like maybe there was a little more punitive.
Right, like they're trying to stop a trend.
Yeah.
Here we go. So check it out.
There's Wellens.
There's Wellens. Well, we don't really need the sound because
I love the clickbait. Avoids most controversial. Oh, here we go.
So kind of hard to tell right there, right?
He wasn't even. He was already I mean, maybe he got sent over. Yeah. You can't see from there how his front wheel like swapped out, but it's hard to say whether it actually hit the barrier. Here we go.
Right. So found something out about YouTube here. So if we go up.
Yeah, you can get the fine scroll.
Come on. There we go.
See what I mean? It's almost like they contact and he stops pedaling and coasts and goes over to the left and comes back and yeah.
In any case. Yeah, Pidcock, see how far he is? Pidcock jumps left, so he swapped.
You're obviously trying to go for the wheel.
Yeah. and they're both dying. Look at how much slower they're going. They're pedaling, their RPMs are lower, and yeah, boom.
Yeah, maybe the guy behind was trying to make a little bit of a run, but even still, I say there was enough room. If you're sprinting for the win in the World Tour, I feel like you could make it through that gap.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you're on your drops too. I think they give one more point here, but I guess we're watching the Cycling Danes coverage here. But they're given right. I mean, I guess he got pretty hurt, which is terrible.
Yeah, I mean that whole side of it in the crash is a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he fractured his hip.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well,
that might lead into our Blinded by Science segment here. In any case, yeah, that was that. It was super unfortunate, but
yeah, Van Gils fractured his pelvis.
that's no fun.
That's kind of a tough one for riding bikes, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fractured pelvis. Now it's
So
gonna.
there's 51 comments on Escape Collective, and not a lot of sprinters in those comments.
So does that mean they're saying he hooked him? He should be relegated? Yeah, they're not sprinters.
There's
Come
127 comments on YouTube. The first one I see says Jan Christian is racking up some bad karma. And then another one says that the judges were incredibly slow. Christian went up to the podium, was at the award ceremony, and then they disqualified him. So it sounded like they maybe couldn't make their mind up. Anyway.
I feel like it should have some type of clause like the NFL that unless you can absolutely overrule the initial call or something that, they got to do it within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Well, the horse racing stewards do a good job. They should probably bring some of them in.
Horse racing stewards.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, yeah, so broken pelvis.
So doesn't that bring up a topic that we were kind of throwing around a little bit earlier that seems to be back up in the news in the pro peloton?
Yeah, and it fits well into our little bit Blinded by Science because I think there is some science. Yeah, that the bone density discussion has resurfaced. It's back in the news cycle. Like
for those who don't know, what would be the bone density discussion?
Bone density discussion is how athletes, and specifically cyclists that do little or no contact sports or any type of sports that have any jarring or anything, say like running or even weightlifting to build strength, that one's bones can become fragile. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. By not doing that type of stuff. So especially with cycling, which is like a zero gravity type of effort, unless of course you're hitting the pavement. And so the bones are weaker so that when you do hit the pavement,
you fracture,
break that or fracture that might not normally fracture. And so it's this whole, there was just something on cycling news within the last couple of days that came up. And I looked at that and I was like, I remember this coming up like
in the Sky days, the Sky heydays. Was it before that?
It was like the Garmin days before it was Garmin, when it was Project 5210 or whatever Jonathan Vaughter's initial team was. Mm-hmm. So there was a guy named Blake Caldwell, and he was on that team as they were going from Conti to Pro Conti. And he had to retire basically because he kept falling and getting fractures. And I remember this from the late 2000s. So it was like when I had the race teams in like 2007, last year of Codex Sierra Nevada in 2008. And so I looked him back up because I'm like, this is like sticking in my head. So I got some information, and I remember that he had started like, his parents were towing him around in a trailer before he even raced bikes. But the guy started racing bikes when he was 8 years old. So really didn't do any other kind of sports from when he was 8 years old, which is what, like second grade?
Yeah.
Third grade, right? I mean, think when we were 8 years old. We didn't even know each other then. We've known each other for a long time. And finally, when he was 25, so 17 years of basically no weight-bearing activity, not playing contact sports is all. He had already, as a junior, said he had won 11 junior national championships between the road and the track, competed at the 2001 Junior World Champs. In his first year as an amateur in 2003, he had stagiaire rides with Prime Alliance, which was a team in the U.S., and then the UCI Pro Team Marco Polo, and then it was Team 5280 Subaru, which was that initial iteration of what's now EF, Education First Easy Post, and so he was part of that whole team. And in 2008, in the Tour of Missouri, he crashed and suffered a fractured hip and a collarbone. So sidelined him. Tour of Missouri was like in September something. Sidelined him for the rest of that year. It's like, okay, I'll heal up. He still had a contract. So he returned to competition in the spring of 2009, fell in a training crash and fractured his hip again. And this series of hip fractures and the problems he had led to, he had a bone density test and found out that he had a diagnosis of osteoporosis at 25 years old. And this is just one guy.
Right.
But I mean, this was the first time that this was brought to my attention. It was over, 15, 16 years ago. And that basically kind of ended his racing career. It also says, if you look him up on Wikipedia, that he just graduated from medical school and he's a doctor now. So maybe it worked out better for him in that respect. But it's an old topic of discussion. I'm sure there's a little bit more science around it and a little bit more information on it now. But like, you don't see that as much with motos, right?
Right. Well, also, look at it this way. John Hornbeck, right, who ended up racing on whatever the iteration of Hincapie's team was when Craven was managing it. He started off wanting to be a pro motocrosser. That's how I got connected with him. I rode with him once and was like, oh, wow, this guy's got a lot of talent. But he would crash his dirt bike and always break bones because he was like Greg McNeil size, limbs. So part of it can just be that you're just very skinny, in general. But if you're already, like shouldn't say skinny, I should say like small boned. But if you're already there and then on top of it, you're not doing anything to, increase bone density. And I think back in that era was probably maybe still towards the end of an era where, nowadays guys are doing strength work or at least, plyometrics and stuff more throughout the season, right? UAE's like activating muscles with bands right before the start. I think in that previous era was a little bit more do some gym work in the winter and then you just race your bike all year. So I think now that people are probably, the athletes are probably a little bit more well-rounded in that respect. But interestingly enough, the one thing that I wanted to add on top of that is when you guys were talking about bringing up the bone density discussion, the one that I remembered was there was some type of scuttlebutt in I feel like 13, 14, 15, 16-ish around that era that people were claiming that the athletes had figured out an actual mechanism via diet or supplementation or something to try to lighten up your bone density. Like that they were actually doing it on purpose because how else can you lose weight? But then that discussion came up also. It's like, but if you fall and you break a bone that you wouldn't normally, where are the performance parameters, where do they go? I mean, I don't know exactly what you would do. I can't remember what they said they would do, but I just know from general health, man, messing around with like your bone density and marrow and all of that seems like a risky proposition.
Well, you were talking about, a guy like Hornbeck who had small bones.
Right.
And Ed, you were referencing your big Scottish bones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
So knock on wood, I've never broken a bone. And knocking real hard. I've crashed a lot, but I've never broken anything. I've dislocated lots of soft tissue, and I have horrible soft tissue, and I'm hypermobile. One thing that when I saw this article, it said in 23, a Spanish researchers published a paper entitled "One Season of Professional Racing is Enough to Negatively Affect Bone Health." So it's specifically targeting professional cycling and grand tours and the impact there. I'm just skimming.
Yeah.
I noticed that some of the pros are doing a little bit of running occasionally in the off season and different things to, and they're doing more strength training that obviously helps improve their bone density.
Right.
Um, we all grew up on bikes. I mean, we all did different sports before bikes, so that probably helped. Um, but when I quit racing and I tried to do other sports that involved gravity, namely running and volleyball, I couldn't do it. I was just so injury prone because I
Yeah.
had missed those developmental years of dealing with gravity. So it's just the thought that crossed my mind is that my soft tissue wasn't ready for life after the bicycle.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's eccentric loading is what it's called. It's where your muscle is getting actually longer as it loads. When you think of like pedal stroke, through the power phase, the muscles that are mostly driving it are getting shorter under load. Cycling never has that eccentric phase. Like, for instance, when you're running, when you push off a foot and you're springing up in the air, that's concentric. The muscles that are pushing you up are getting shorter. But when you land on that other leg and you're decelerating, your weight coming in and bending, that's the eccentric load. And cycling has no eccentric load. And I can remember when we were, pros, you could go out and ride 100 miles, but one afternoon of light shopping, would put you in the hurt locker if you had to walk around and stand up. You just weren't designed for that.
Right.
So,
Still will.
yeah, and all that connective tissue. I mean, you think like, I just know in general sports, they talk about something like 90% of injuries and overall happen under deceleration, right? You think somebody usually doesn't get hurt stepping up on the curb. They get hurt stepping off the curb and their ankle rolls a little bit and then all their weight, pushes right down through that chain and you roll an ankle or roll a knee or something like that. And so again, cycling doesn't have any eccentric, at least not road cycling. If you get into mountain biking or something, yeah, you're doing like, plyometric holding, you're pushing in, that type of stuff, jumping, but road cycling really doesn't have that as much. Yeah.
Yeah, I remembered you telling me about that. All the injuries happen in the deceleration, not the acceleration.
Yeah.
So that's why if you're ever doing box jumps, be careful getting off the box.
Yeah.
Right? You can jump up onto the box, but
Yeah.
be careful getting down. But it makes a lot of sense, and if you can practice your body to do that, I think it's helpful. I mean, just knowing that, and as we're all aging, and I think we've spoken about, doing some gym work, doing mobility stuff and flexibility and even body weight work, doing all that stuff tends to help. Like I say, I feel better riding on the bike now than I have in years or maybe even decades, just doing this extra kind of work, which seems like it shouldn't be that way because the years keep adding on. But hey, it's working, so got to stick with it.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and doing it year round, also your body is used to it. You never have it like, we were racers and you would lift a bunch over the winter time. You'd have that initial, 6 weeks where it felt like every day out there, your legs were heavy and you were dragging, and then you would stop lifting and ride and kind of ride all that stiffness and lack of souplesse out of your legs, and it would come along, and then if you would just try and do that 6 months later, your legs would be destroyed. But I know just in general from lifting, once you build those patterns, it's pretty amazing actually how little you have to lift in terms of just overall quantity and even weight to just maintain strength once you build it. But the key is building it. I mean, you could do, for somebody who's lifted a bunch, I mean, if you had a month where you didn't get to work out much, you could do, push-ups, sit-ups, some body weight squats, different things, and still be able to maintain just a lot of your overall, capability, and just pick up a weight and lift a few reps of some medium to heavy weight. And it's kind of amazing how quickly your body just kind of falls right back into line, as opposed to say something like you're working on your VO2, that's just time you've got to put back in. If you took a month off or something, your capacity is going to be way down. So it's definitely a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and I think a key thing too with all of that stuff is I think when we were kids, it's like, oh, how much did you squat or how much did you put on the leg press? But it's all about the technique. It's not about the weight to prevent that injury, right? And you know that with so many people that you've trained, right? Like getting the technique down with little or no weight is so much more important before you ever try to add any of that weight. And that's going to give you that longevity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same thing like coaching, right? If you're trying to help somebody with their technique riding on a bike and you're having them do a maximum 5-minute effort, they really can't work on their technique. you're putting everything into the effort. So it's kind of like that same theme. You gotta, you got to unload your system a little bit to help it learn those initial pathways and get your mobility in, open all the joint stuff, and really train your movement patterns first before you can then go load up. But interestingly enough, much like, say, putting in a bunch of base miles, it's kind of the same thing. You got to build your platform, platform wide, so that you have, a good foundation to stack up your harder work later. Yeah.
My physical therapist pointed out to me that doing strength training will help me when I do occasionally, every once in a while, fall over mountain biking.
It definitely does.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing about crashing that crossed my mind is that Eddie B used to take us to the gymnastic soft foam room and make us tumble and tell us, "You're always going to fall towards your heart," I think is what he would say. So I think
he had a belief you'd always fall towards your heart.
Yeah, you're going to fall to the left, right?
Yes, correct.
Correct. Yeah.
So we'd be tumbling in the padded walls there, but it honestly was kind of a good thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Learning how to tumble. It's just learning how to dissipate that energy, not sticking a limb out stiff, but knowing how to tuck and roll out of it. You might get some contact points razzed up, but you usually don't, jam something in, jam it in really hard.
Well, I guess that can be when the difference between when a rider falls and gets back up and gets on their bike and keeps going, or gets into the medical vehicle, right?
Yeah, that's
knowing
it.
how to fall. I mean, we joke about the tuck and roll, but it's so true.
Yeah, you definitely learn how to do it. Yeah, and you can get mind blocks in you too if you get an injury. I had that because I had injured my left shoulder this one year, and I went back and I was trying to tumble, and at first it was like I had a short circuit. I couldn't commit. It was the weirdest thing. My right side, I could dive and roll and do it, and I would go to my left and I would feel my system like resist doing that. It just took a while to kind of get it out of my mind.
And so what got it out of your mind?
Repetition. Start easy, just like anything else. If you can't do the big move, start small, start short. Like if somebody's afraid of heights, don't stick them up on the balcony at the Empire State Building. Start on a curb, then on a 3-step, work your way up. I just had to make it easy enough that I could roll and really, focus on it. And then, it's kind of like you click out of that mode. You get rid of that, whatever that protection circuit is that's in there, and get back into rolling. Yeah.
Tuck and roll. That's funny. I forgot about those gymnastic rolling sessions when we were juniors at the training center. But yeah, there was a lot of old Eastern European methodology, huh? Which I think a lot of it was legit, right?
That was really fun. When I lived up there, there were a couple times when I can't remember, I feel like somebody gave us a key or something, and we would go into the gymnastics, the gymnasium basically that had all of that at night. I can remember going in there at night at one time and just, piling stuff up and just launching into the foam pit, legitimate foam pit. If we would have even known that you could jump bikes into a foam pit, I'm sure we would have thought about doing that, trying to backflip a road bike or something. But that was really fun. And jumping in there and being dark at night. And somebody came in one time and we were like hiding down in the foam. You could just like bury your way down in there, probably 10 feet of foam, hanging out in there. I guess the theme kind of like the Cadillac Ranch, getting in some mischief.
Yeah. The Cadillac Ranch. We were talking about something the other day, and the Cadillac Ranch came into mind, of all of our, that was the Nationals.
85 in between Super Week and
Milwaukee.
Nationals. Yeah. In between Super Week and the Nationals, which were in Milwaukee that year. Yeah, we all hung out at a friend of our mom's. He had this ranch out in Illinois we went and stayed at, and man, that was so much fun. It was like a real, everything.
Yeah,
chickens,
horses and cattle.
Horses, cattle, some pigs.
Well, the team time trial training was excellent because there was just cornfields, and us juniors with no driver's license could drive motor pacing in front of the 10-speed drive team. And the reason that you're remembering this, Chaos, is there was that cool poster of probably Tom Resch that we were looking at.
That's what it was. You sent that picture.
Yeah.
Let me see. I might
So
be
a
able
couple
to
episodes
pull
ago,
that one up.
we were looking at those team time trial bikes. We were motor pacing in James Urbanus's Volkswagen with the hatch up, and JT was driving, no driver's license. one time I was driving the 10-speed drive team van on that same trip, and didn't have my driver's license, and we came into a town, and I just like kind of panicked and just went straight through a stop sign with all you guys behind the van. And
I think I remember that actually. Yeah.
Bostic said, "Junior, you gotta stop those stop signs." Well,
those are some good times.
I was like paranoid to put the brakes on with you guys behind, and I just went sent it right through the intersection.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
I found that picture that brought that up because we stayed at the Cadillac Ranch. That was it, and then I started thinking of all of these memories from that time. Right, so this is the picture.
The small front wheel too.
The small front wheel, the cow horns.
This
was that disc, the Ambrosia disc. They call it the Fred Flintstone disc because it was like big and heavy, like those stone wheels on the Flintstones car. And this picture, that's Tom Resch right there. So this is 1985. The small front wheel, and I was zooming in on this. I guess I can't get it to zoom. No.
Well, I can't tell the van that I ran the stop sign in.
Yeah.
The doors were wide open. You guys were behind it with the doors open.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that photo is at the Cadillac Ranch. See that thing behind there?
Entirely possible.
That thing is behind there.
Yeah.
I can't get this thing.
One of the funniest. I was just going to say as we were talking. Well, you go ahead because mine was.
Well, one day they were out training on those bikes. Those bikes were shipped to them. Those bikes were state of the art and very expensive and very hard to get to. And not everybody had such a bike. And so those bikes were shipped to the Cadillac Ranch, and they built them up, and they were out training for the team time trial. And it started to pour rain, and they were out on those beautiful bikes, and they had to ride them up the dirt road to the Cadillac Ranch.
That's right. Good memory. I remember that, and it was kind of like that whitish sort of like soil that just got everywhere, like really.
Especially on those discs. Those discs, disc wheels were hard to get, and they got abused that day.
You're grinding the brakes into there and everything. That's right, man. Good memory on that one. What I was going to bring up was, we talked about the Cadillac Ranch, and we drove out there from Milwaukee and pulled in there late at night. And I think Bob wasn't there or something. And, we come in and, we kind of like look around, and there's like this, there was a house on the property, which is where we all stayed in. And then Bob, had built a cool apartment upstairs and part of the barn, but we were in the house. And I remember we roll in and there's moonlight, and Bostic, he's the only one there that had a girlfriend. And he's like, oh yeah, we're going to get out for a moonlight swim. And, the moonlight's shimmering off the water, and Bostic's like, goes out there, him and whatever her name was, Sue maybe. That was her name. And they go out for a little bit of moonlight swim, and we wake up in the morning and just realize that pond is just where everything from the farm runs off to. Every pen, all the pig pens, which were like behind it. It was just like all the just nastiest funk in there. Remember Bostic got like full pink eye after from swimming in there. We were giving him endless shite for that one. Yeah. Like, come in for your romantic evening under the moonlight, and you're swimming around in pig, fecal matter out there.
Yeah, pigs and cows and horses. That's right. That was one of the things. That was hilarious.
Oh, that was funny.
That same field that was right there where the pond was.
Yeah.
Every night at around dusk, the trains would leave Detroit or whatever,
Chicago,
loaded with cars, and they would come through the ranch real slow. And we're like,
the tracks were a little soft right there, they said, or it was a little unstable, and so they would have to slow way down as they went through them, went like 10 miles an hour or something, and then speed back up. Yeah, as they went through, loaded down with cars, which I guess
was going so slow we jumped on.
Yeah, that was JT and I. That was
Me too. Yeah. Me too. Because I laid face flat in the farm field when the guys got out their flashlights looking for us. I was in the between the the rows of plants, like laying face down.
Dude, I'll never forget where we jump on the back. Now, to our credit, we were smart enough that we're like, hey, let's not jump on the side. because if you jump on the side of the train and something happens, you're going to fall under the train. So we're like, we'll wait for the train to go by and we'll run and jump on the back. And so we do that, and we're like, unbelievable. We're hiding behind the bushes. It's going through really slow run. And I remember JT and I are on either side of the caboose, and we're like laughing like, whoo, or I was on the back and he was on the side. And all of a sudden the door opens up.
Yep.
There's a guy in the caboose, and he comes down. What the F are you guys doing out here? And he like reached out and tried to grab me, and I jumped off, but he grabbed JT's arm, and then JT jumped off of there. Yeah. And then we all ran back to the, ran back to the ranch, and then they stopped the train. As we learned later, you're really not supposed to jump on a train, not something wise to do. It's federal, it's this whole thing. And that was what got them to stop the train and come looking for all of us for...
They came to the door, and Bostic is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, by that time I'd snuck back in the house.
No, because those guys had no idea.
Well, that was
right?
the best part. Is they're like,
part.
no, they wouldn't do that, you know, because they were thinking we wouldn't do that. But actually, we were fully out there doing that.
Yeah.
See, but we're telling that story right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, we were kind of, you know, sort of on a quasi development team for 10-speed drive, and you know, we got away with that. But the 7-Eleven brothers, the 7-Eleven junior team, Aaron Durantz and Scott McKinley and so forth, they had their own junior development team at the same time. And about the exact same time, one of them was spraying a fire extinguisher at a hotel. And
that was at the dorms, I think it was. But I think it might have been
Track Nationals that year. And
oh, was
I
it?
remember
Oh, it may have been that year.
Nationals.
Yeah, it was Track Nationals. Yeah.
And they got in trouble, and you know, the hotel management looked at to see that it was a 7-Eleven credit card, and Aaron got kicked off the team, you know, and he was a pretty talented rider. So
well, and the bummer of it is Durantz got booted off the team not for spraying the fire extinguisher, but for lying to Akowitz and saying he didn't do it. And that was what we found out. They're like, hey, if he would have just owned it, he would have been in trouble and maybe got a suspension. But the fact that he didn't own it apparently was the tipping factor.
yeah.
Yeah, Durantz. That was so much fun. I was back with those guys at Track Nationals and driving around, and that was Durantz. That was the first time I really heard like rap music. He was like up by Sacramento. He used to get all these different tapes and stuff and run DMC, and we would drive over to the velodrome. You're right, 85, and drive over to the velodrome each day. And it was through a really bad part of town. And I'll never forget that Run DMC song Hard Times coming on. And it was really just like a window of what I was seeing. And I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never heard the music. And yet I'm going, wow, here's this music I've never heard. And they're talking about everything that's going on right now in you know, a scenario that I had never seen before. So Durantz really got me started on my rap journey. Durantz and McKinley, but Durantz was leading the way.
Where were the Track Nationals that year? Were they in Wisconsin?
I think they were in Indy, maybe.
They were in Indy because I went with the team to the time trial, and I think DSU went to Track Nationals.
Yeah.
Somehow then we grouped up and tried to drive to Road Nationals in James Urbanus's Volkswagen Rabbit again that was used for motor pacing, and something happened to the transmission that day, and we only had second and third gear, and we needed to get to Milwaukee from Illinois and to race the Nationals the next day, and we had 2 gears. We limped into town. I think JT was driving. Probably he had his learner's permit, but maybe not. And then you were trying to get into the race. You were unsuccessful. You were there, you know, like you were trying to say you were a resident at the OTC, and why weren't they letting you into the race? So we were having all this haggling and signing up and registering, and then we went back to the parking lot and we got underneath the car and we found these 2 parts that needed to pop together, and then we picked up the rest of the gears. Yeah,
they started working again. And when we came to try to come to a stop sign at one point and went to take off with no first gear, and I remember trying to like slip the clutch, so we were really like rolling through, you know, all the stop signs that we could. But once we got into Milwaukee, it definitely became more difficult to pull that off. Yeah, that was a good adventure. No internet, no YouTube videos to watch. Just, you know, climb under the car and see if you can figure it out. That was so much fun.
Well, so I guess a couple of morals is if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, don't get caught, right? With the train. And if you do get caught, like with the fire extinguisher, own up to it.
own up to it if you get
yeah.
caught. Well, and I remember when Bob came back to the house, the very first thing that I did was I went right to him and owned up for the fact. I just said, hey, I got to tell you, we did something that you're probably not going to be too happy about. And he's like, oh no, to lead in with that. And I told him about jumping the train, and I'll never forget. He goes, oh man, he goes, I've always wanted to jump a train.
This is the guy whose property it is.
He didn't seem that mad at all. He was kind of impressed that we did it, so yeah.
Well, I'll tell you guys, if everything goes according to plan, in about a week and a half on March 1st up in Truckee is I think they call it the Great Ski Race. James Urbanis is supposed to be coming out.
That's right.
Skiing with McNeil with the corn dog, and I'm going to go up there and see those guys, and then we're going to have lunch or dinner that day. So, yeah,
dude, Supreme Team reunion, KS and Urbo.
Yeah, I'll have to ask him about it was a Blue Rabbit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a powder blue Rabbit. Now, was it diesel? Was it a diesel?
I thought James. No, he did have some diesels though. He always had some interesting vehicles.
Yeah, I do remember it was a powder blue. I mean, it is kind of funny that you're like, oh yeah, here, take my car from here, and I'm traveling over there, and then you can drive it. And maybe he assumed we were all legally licensed. I know I definitely had nothing that morning of the Nationals. Yeah.
The next morning, you drove it across Milwaukee to the feed zone for us. We overslept our alarm.
We overslept, yeah. The plan was, one of you, maybe it was JT, I think, must have had a license. And whoever was the licensed one we're going to drive everybody over there, right? And then you guys would go. But you're like, hey, we got to ride right to the start. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll make it over there. Luckily, all the gears were working. But yeah, made it in the feed zone the first lap.
Yeah. Well, and I had a great warm-up because I was panicked.
Those are great warm-ups, actually. That's what I learned a great lesson about the panicked warm-up. I did the Bend stage race, Cascade Classic. It was the first year I was in the elite class, and JT and I flew up there, and we couldn't get a rental car, so we took a taxi to our host housing, and then I surmised that I could ride to the start of the stages, which the time trial was probably about 15 miles away, and I somehow miscalculated and left late and was hammering out there thinking I was going to miss my start, and I actually had training wheels on my bike, and then I had my race wheels strapped to my backpack. So I rode out there on my training wheels with my race wheels, got there, and I was like a little bit late, but I hammered to get it warmed up, and I had one of the best time trials. It went up this like small little volcano. It like went up and spiraled around it. And it taught me something about the warm up. After that, I always warmed up way harder. Before I kind of took it as a little bit more, just go out and get your warm up. But after that, I realized if you really hammer, you definitely get a better warm up in. So the rushed warm up has some merit.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So I think we should wrap up with some dueling amateurs. Who's got one?
Oh, it sounds like, all right. Well, so on Sunday when I was saying, so I went out for my ride in Summerlin in the morning, and then I go on and peruse now and then and see if Carp State Beach has any of these. There's a few, really this row of prime camping spots right on the water. And I saw that one for Sunday night, and it was a holiday on Monday had opened up. So I got the side. I stuck my van down there after my first ride of the day and invited a couple buddies. Larry Van Zant and Jonah came down. Mika walked down with the neighbor's dog, and we're hanging out. And so we went out for a Sunset Bluffs ride. So we went back out, and so we're ripping out there. And Larry hadn't really ridden out there that much. He was on his hardtail. Jonah and I are on our gravel bikes. We've obviously ridden it more, but I've been riding it a bunch. So, we're ripping, sun's going down, and we're doing all these different loops. And we had called in some pizzas for us to pick up at 6:30. There's a great local organic kind of deli right by the state beach. So we called in pizzas, had it all planned out, do our ride, get back. It's like 6:15 or something like that. 6:10. I'm like, this is great. Can change into our clothes, roll over, get the pizzas. And so I go to the van and I reach in to whip my phone out, and no phone in my pocket. And I'm like, it was so cold, I had thrown on an extra jersey, this kind of wool merino top that I have. And I took my phone out to check something, went to put it back in. It must have stuck on the edge anyway. And so we were ripping around this one loop. And in hindsight, I actually remember when it fell out of my pocket, I thought some type of little rodent or something, you know, because there's bunnies and everything running all over, had kind of like hit my foot. I'm like, oh, what's that? I didn't think anything of it. So we get back to the van after all this. I'm like, no phone. So I go in, I have, you know, internet in the van. I whip open my laptop. I go on my Find My and I see it. I can see exactly where it is on the map. I'm like, I know exactly where that lap is. So we all had lights. I had some lights in the van. We put them back on. I plug my iCloud account information into Jonah's phone so that he can track my phone. And we rode right out there and hit the play sound and ding, 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 ding. Went and found my phone and came back. Only picked up the pizzas like 10 minutes late, but well, actually, no, that's not true. About 15 minutes late. And they closed at 7, so for a while I was stressing. We were going out and we got to a certain point. I'm like, all right, guys, I know where it is. We got to go right. And I went right and Jonah and Larry went straight. And all of a sudden I get over and I'm like, I know my phone's right around there. I look, I'm like, where are those guys? And I'm just like yelling, screaming. I'm waving my flashlight around. I don't see them. I'm like, how could we get lost? They were literally 50 feet behind me, like, you know, a few minutes ago. And then I'm looking around and all of a sudden up at the very top of the bluffs, I see their headlights flashing. They had gone a different turn and gone the pavement, ridden all the way up the top. So then I rode all the way up, got them. And then we went back down and did the Find My and found it. So it was a total amateur move, but I did find my phone and pick up the pizza. So that's my amateur.
And blinded by science. The Find My worked too, right?
The Find My absolutely worked. Yeah. You know, you got to remember you got to know your password off the top of your head on that one, so you can plug into your buddy's situation there and have them track the phone. But I got to say that feature worked miraculous. It was great.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was my amateur. Oh, and to double up on my amateur, it was a double day. Not too long before that, the battery went dead. My battery went dead in my Di2 also. So then I was stuck in this gear and we were ripping down and I was just like probably going like, I don't have cadence meter on that bike, but I bet you I was probably pulling like 130 RPMs trying to spin it out and stay on Jonah's wheel. So anyway, so that was my amateur.
That was it?
Well, yeah. What about you guys?
Though I have one which Ed, he concurs with me on this. I call amateur on every rider racing on the road that doesn't wear gloves.
Yes.
I see so many of them riding and not wearing gloves. And it's and I believe back when I was running the race teams, I actually put it in the guys' contract that if they crashed not riding wearing gloves and they weren't able to race, they wouldn't get paid for the number of days they were out, because, you know, it's a heat thing, it's this and that, but at the end of the day, if you fall on your hands and you can't race because you did that because you didn't have gloves on,
that is an amateur move. And the worst part is Vanderpool likes to not wear gloves. So whenever you see like one of the best riders out there doing something, everybody wants to follow along. But I agree. Yeah. I could I'm never a non-glove guy. I've always been a gloved guy.
I think I fell once on my hands and without gloves on, and like it was like having burns on your hands, like from sliding on the pavement.
Oh yeah.
If you're lucky, if it's not rough, because if it's rough, then it tears it up. So
yeah.
I often wonder why it is that, you know, it's the heat thing, the feel, sensitivity, whatever. You know, and I noticed Remco right before his time trials, he's sticking his hand in ice because your hands are an ability to really cool your body temperature. But it's just a trend, and it was nice to see Del Toro just smoke everybody in a complete drag race with full-fingered gloves on the other day at the front.
Oh, yeah, at the end of that was a pretty good move.
I wanted to see if he had him on today on the big climb at UAE, but, you know, he probably didn't.
No, I watched the highlights. I wasn't specifically looking for full-fingered bright white gloves, but I'm pretty sure I would have noticed if he was wearing them.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't even wear short finger gloves anymore in any situation. If I'm only riding my gravel bike, even if I ride on the road, I've gotten so used to long finger gloves. That's all I have. I have a couple pair of short fingers, and they're just in the bottom of my, my stuff sack with all my, or my cube with all my socks and gloves in it, and they just sit at the bottom. But I never run it, and maybe because one of the most painful crashes I've ever had was I crash. I think it might be the crash where I was riding your orange choach because I had like broken my frame or something and ate it in a sprint out on 192 doing that, and I blew off like 7 of 10 fingertips. And and the skin on your fingertip is kind of thick. Like it hit and went off, and it was actually probably one of the most painful things I ever endured. And I'll never forget because I went out to the chart house with Greg McNeil, our buddy, and I was trying to like eat bread, and I think one hand I only had one fingertip that wasn't blown off, and I was trying to like hold food again. It was unbelievably painful, and I was so determined not to let it like interrupt my early season training that I went out for a road ride, a long road ride 2 days after it happened, and I was all the way out at like UCSB, and I got a flat tire, and I didn't even think about it, and I was trying to use the levers, and my hands hurt so freaking bad, and I had got it out and got it changed, and I could not get the tire back on. I mean, I was probably there for 45 minutes of just like, and finally I was like, if this pinches the tube, I'm screwed, and just tire levered it in, and it held, and I rode home. But it was a pretty miserable occurrence. So probably that definitely shaped my glove wearing habits from then on out.
Yeah.
Yeah, protect the fingertips. No fun.
Yeah.
That's just simple insurance. You should all do it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to hit a milestone next time with number 20.
Yeah.
So
nice.
thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we appreciate your comments, your likes, and sharing it with your friends. We're trying to grow this. And we will be at Sea Otter doing some fireside chats.
Yeah, the fireside chat.
Yep. Yeah. So we may, if we're inspired enough, organize a ride or just welcome you to our campfire. So look forward to seeing everyone at Sea Otter and growing what we've got going and reaching 20 next time we get together. So thank you, everyone.
All right. Cool.
Peace.